My name's Edward Carrigan. I'm 43, a man no one ever called lucky. I rent a small two-bedroom apartment that always smells faintly of burnt toast. I drive a 10-year-old Honda that shakes when it hits 60. My life used to run like clockwork. Office, home, leftovers, sleep, repeat. No excitement, no surprises, just quiet routines and long evenings that felt like static. Until one Tuesday morning, the morning that split my life into before and after. I'd overslept, spilled coffee on my only clean pair of socks, and muttered curses at myself while waiting for the kettle to boil again. Somewhere between frustration and caffeine withdrawal, I sat down, opened the newspaper, and saw 6 numbers that didn't seem real. 7, 14, 23, 41, 46, 9. My numbers. At first I thought it was a misprint. I compared it to last week's draw, blinked twice, then checked my crumpled ticket again. Same numbers, same order. I'd been playing those numbers for 7 years. Birthdays, dates that meant something, bits of superstition I never really believed in. And now those random choices were worth $3.4 million. I called the lottery office, hands shaking so badly I dropped the phone twice. The woman on the line confirmed it with the kind of calm you only hear from people who've said the same sentence 100 times before. Congratulations, Mr. Carrigan. You've won $3.4 million. I laughed, then I cried. Then I just stood there, barefoot in my kitchen, whispering to no one. This can't be real. The next 24 hours were a blur. Reporters calling, emails piling up, neighbors suddenly waving from windows. Someone from the State Lottery Commission asked if I wanted to stay anonymous. I hesitated. I really did. But after years of feeling invisible, something inside me said, let them see. Let them see that I wasn't a failure anymore. So the next day, I was sitting under studio lights, my face plastered across the screen with the headline, Edward Carrigan, the new millionaire. The host, a man with a perfect tan and even whiter teeth, asked how it felt to go from ordinary man to millionaire overnight. I said, half nervous, it still feels like I need to clock in tomorrow. Everyone laughed. I smiled, pretending to enjoy it. But somewhere under those lights, surrounded by flashing cameras and fake laughter, I felt something strange, a chill under my skin. It didn't feel like a beginning. It felt like exposure. That night, when I finally made it home, my voicemail was already full. Old coworkers, classmates, even a guy I barely remembered from college, all suddenly remembered me. Congrats, Eddie. So proud of you, man. You deserve it after all these years. It felt nice at first, warm, familiar, until I realized every message ended the same way. We should catch up soon. By midnight, I was scrolling through endless notifications when one name stopped me cold. Vanessa. My ex-wife. We hadn't spoken in 3 years. Our divorce had been quick, cold, and the kind of brutal that doesn't leave bruises, just silence. 2 lawyers, a judge who'd seen it all before, and a stack of papers that reduced a decade of marriage to signatures and clauses. Vanessa didn't cry. She didn't even raise her voice. She just sat there, immaculate as ever, her lipstick perfect, her hands steady, like she was negotiating a business deal, not ending a family. She took most of the savings, the house, and full custody of Bonnie, who was 11 then, still young enough to believe her parents were supposed to be on the same side. When the judge asked if there was any hope of reconciliation, Vanessa gave a polite little laugh. She said, "Your Honor, my husband's a good man, just not a successful one." That sentence stayed with me longer than the marriage did. She called me a failure more than once, said she didn't want Bonnie to grow up around someone without ambition. And the worst part? At the time, I believed her. I believed that working a quiet job, paying bills on time, and loving my daughter wasn't enough. That success was something you had to show off, not something you simply lived with. Some nights I still heard her voice in my head, that perfect detached tone. "You'll never be more than average, Edward." And I'd lie there in the dark, wondering if maybe she was right, until the day my ticket proved her wrong, and her voice came back, softer, sweeter, and dripping with the kind of affection that always costs something. And now, here she was. The message was short, polished, sweet. "Hi, Edward, I saw you on TV. I've been thinking a lot about us and about Bonnie. She really needs her father. Maybe we could all talk?" I must have read it 10 times. My chest tightened, not with anger, but confusion. Not once during the last few years had she reached out. Not when I lost my job. Not when I sent birthday gifts that came back unopened. But now she wanted to talk about family. Still, there was one part I couldn't ignore. Bonnie. I'd missed her more than I could ever put into words. So I said yes. That Saturday, they came to my apartment. When I opened the door, I barely recognized Vanessa. Expensive perfume, manicured nails, hairstyled like she'd walked out of a salon ad. She smiled too brightly. "I brought cookies," she said. "Your favorite, chocolate chip." Bonnie stood beside her, half hiding behind a backpack, taller than I remembered. Her eyes met mine, hesitant but soft. "Hi, Dad." That broke something in me. Vanessa walked in like she still owned the place, commenting on the curtains, the dishes, the cozy size. She laughed too loud, complimented everything too easily. Bonnie sat quietly, sipping juice, watching both of us like she was studying a foreign language she once knew. For a few hours, we pretended to be a family again. We talked about school, weather, memories. And for a moment, a dangerous, fragile moment, I let myself believe it was real. But then I caught Vanessa's eyes on me. Not with warmth, but calculation. Every word, every laugh, every touch of her hand felt rehearsed. When they left, Bonnie hugged me tightly, whispering, "I missed you." Vanessa kissed my cheek and said softly, "You look happy, Edward. You deserve it." The door closed. Silence filled the room. I looked around, the untouched cookies, the faint smell of her perfume, the half-empty juice glass on the counter, and a strange thought crawled up my spine. It wasn't love that brought her back. It was the money. And deep down, I already knew this was only the beginning of how far people would go to look kind when gold was on the table. They say money doesn't change people. It just reveals who they really are. I didn't believe that until I won the lottery. At first, it was just Vanessa and Bonnie. The surprise visits, the laughter that sounded a little too rehearsed. But soon the ripples spread. It was like someone had thrown a stone into my quiet, predictable life, and everyone I'd ever known came swimming back toward the noise. The next person to resurface was my brother, William. We hadn't spoken in almost 2 years. Not after our last argument, when he'd asked me for a temporary loan that somehow never got paid back. I told him I couldn't keep covering his messes. He told me I was selfish. That was the end of it. Until one night my phone lit up with his name. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. "Eddie," he said, his voice booming with that familiar false warmth. "You think you can win the damn lottery and not call your own brother?" "Hey, Will," I said carefully. "Didn't know you still had my number." He laughed, ignoring the jab. "You're famous now. I saw you on TV, man. Couldn't believe it. I knew you'd catch a break eventually." I almost told him it wasn't a break. It was a fluke. But he didn't really care about the details. He was already on a roll. "Listen," he said, "I'm coming over. We gotta celebrate properly. Beer, just like the old days." And that's how, 2 hours later, my younger brother, the man who once called me a boring old accountant with no life, was sitting in my living room, feet up on my coffee table, grinning like we'd never missed a beat. "Can you believe it, bro?" he said, cracking open a beer. "Little Eddie Carrigan, the millionaire. Man, you deserve this." He talked for hours. About old times, Dad's fishing trips, the stupid fights we had as kids. It almost felt real. For a moment, I wanted to believe it was, but then his tone shifted. "So listen," he said, clearing his throat, pretending to sound casual. "You remember that detailing business I started last year? It's been rough lately. Bad season. I'm late on rent, clients disappearing. Just a mess." He leaned back, studying my reaction like a salesman checking if he'd hooked the buyer. "I just need a small loan," he said finally. "A few thousand, just to keep it running." "You'd be saving my life, man." There it was. The invisible script that everyone seemed to be reading from lately. I didn't answer right away. He waited, smiling, but not like a brother smiles. It was the tight-lipped smile of someone who'd already spent the money in his head. "I'll think about it," I said finally. His eyes flickered, just for a second, before he plastered on another grin. Of course. You're busy now. I get it. Just text me whenever." He finished his beer, slapped my shoulder, and left with a cheerful, "Don't be a stranger, millionaire." When the door closed, the silence hit me like a wave. My brother, my only family left besides Bonnie, had come back not for me, but for a lifeline. And maybe I shouldn't have been surprised. After all, William was always good at spotting opportunity. But it stung anyway. If that had been the only one, maybe I could have shrugged it off. But it was like once people smelled money, they couldn't unsmell it. My phone became a magnet for fake warmth. Friends who hadn't texted in years suddenly remembered my birthday. Guys from the office invited me for drinks, calling it a celebration of destiny. At first, I played along. I told myself maybe they were just happy for me. Maybe not everyone had an agenda. But then, the pattern started. Every meetup was the same laughter, too loud to be real, the same toast to Eddie's luck, the same eyes watching what I ordered, what I tipped, what I said. I started testing them, small things. Once I said I was thinking of investing half the money in a chain of luxury dog spas. They all nodded seriously. "That's genius, bro. Rich people love that stuff. Dogs are the new kids, man. Smart move." Not one of them laughed. Not one of them said, "Edward, that's ridiculous." The old them would have torn the idea apart in seconds. I realized then that money doesn't just change people's tone, it steals their honesty. Soon my group chats were full of dinner plans, weekend trips, parties, in my honor. People laughed louder, leaned in closer, agreed faster. I was surrounded by smiles, but I'd never felt lonelier in my life. One night, after a particularly exhausting dinner full of fake laughter, I walked home through the city streets, past the glowing bars and noise. I felt like a ghost walking through my own life. At home, I sat at the table, staring at my phone, buzzing with messages I didn't want to answer. I miss silence. I miss sincerity. I miss being invisible. Because at least when you're invisible, the few who see you really see you. And then there was Charles Doyle, my boss. Before the lottery, Charles barely noticed I existed. 5 years at that company, and he'd never once called me Edward. It was always Carrigan. He was the kind of man who measured respect by title and paycheck. So when he suddenly called me into his office, smiling, I knew something was off. "Edward," he said, shaking my hand like a politician, "I just wanted to personally congratulate you. You've always been one of our best, hardworking, reliable. It's wonderful to see fortune finally rewarding effort." I almost laughed. Effort? The only thing that won me this money was a gas station ticket and dumb luck, but I nodded politely. That week, everything changed. My workload lightened. The tone in emails softened. Charles even stopped snapping about deadlines. A few days later, HR sent me a surprise. A promotion. A vague, strategic consultant position that basically paid me more for doing less. My colleagues congratulated me like I'd just cured cancer, but I could see it in their eyes. The envy, the curiosity, the silent math of how much did he get after taxes. For a while, I pretended not to notice. Then one afternoon, Charles stopped by my desk. "Edward," he said in that syrupy tone that used to mean I'd done something wrong. "We should grab lunch sometime soon. Just you and me. I'd love your advice on something." That something, of course, was money. He picked an expensive restaurant downtown, the kind of place where the wine list didn't have prices and the waiters spoke in whispers. He ordered for both of us, talking about how proud he was of my journey. I waited. I already knew the pitch was coming. After dessert, he sighed, leaning forward like a man unburdening his soul. "You know, Edward," he said softly, "our company's been having a few rough months. The market's unpredictable. Clients are hesitant. You know how it is." I didn't, but I nodded anyway. He smiled sadly. "We're actually considering taking on a small investor, someone internal, someone trustworthy. With your good fortune and your understanding of the company, You'd be perfect. There it was, the ask. I stirred my drink, pretending to think. An investor, I said. Just a small stake, he said quickly. You'd be helping us, and of course, you'd profit too. It's a win-win. The way he said helping us made me want to laugh. A few weeks ago, he'd been ready to fire me for taking too many sick days. Now he wanted me to save the company. I smiled politely. I'll think about it. He nodded, though I could see the disappointment flicker in his eyes. When the lunch ended, we shook hands. His grip was too tight. Walking home, I caught my reflection in a shop window. My suit, my tired face, the faint smirk that wasn't really a smile. And I realized Charles hadn't seen me either. Not the man who'd stayed late, who did every dull report on time, who never once complained. All he saw was the dollar signs floating above my head. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by silence. Empty beer bottles from William's visit still sat on the counter. My phone buzzed with unread messages from friends. My inbox pinged with great opportunities from Charles. And I thought, this is what fortune looks like? A crowd of smiling faces with open palms. I looked at my reflection in the window again. Somewhere between the man I used to be and the one they thought I'd become, I disappeared. For the first time since the win, I felt something heavy settle in my chest. I didn't trust anyone, not my friends, not my family, not even my boss. And that night, I made a quiet decision that would change everything. I wouldn't touch a single dollar of that money. Not until I knew who still saw me. Not the millionaire, not the story, not the ticket, but Edward Carrigan, the man underneath it all. That decision changed everything. I stopped buying things I didn't need, stopped answering fake congratulations, stopped saying yes to people who suddenly remembered me. I went back to living the way I used to, quietly, predictably, almost invisibly. I still went to work, still drove my old Honda with the cracked mirror, still ate microwave dinners and drank bitter instant coffee. And for the first time in months, I could breathe again. A week after I decided not to touch a single dollar, Vanessa showed up again. No warning, no call, just the sound of her heels clicking down the hallway like trouble with perfect posture. When I opened the door, she gave me that same bright, camera-ready smile. "Eddie," she said, like the word ex-husband had never existed. "You look tired. Are you eating well?" I stepped aside. "What are you doing here, Vanessa?" She walked in without waiting for an answer, perfume filling the room. "Oh, just checking on you," she said sweetly. "You know, for Bonnie's sake." She wandered around, pretending to admire the same furniture she'd once called cheap and depressing. Her fingers brushed the picture frames, pausing on one of Bonnie from years ago, back when she still called me Dad without hesitation. "She misses you," Vanessa said, her tone softening. "But you know how teenagers are. They need consistency, stability." She glanced at me, her expression carefully arranged. "That's why I've been thinking, maybe we could work out a little arrangement. For her, of course." There it was, the ask, dressed up as concern. "What kind of arrangement?" I asked. "Well," she said, taking a slow sip of the coffee she hadn't been invited to drink. "Things are a little tight right now. My car needs repairs, rent went up, and Bonnie deserves better than constant stress, don't you think?" I looked at her, really looked. The flawless makeup, the new manicure, the expensive handbags she'd definitely not bought on tight times. "You want money?" I said quietly. She blinked, feigning shock. "Eddie, I'm talking about your daughter's well-being." "No," I said, you're talking about yourself." Her face stiffened, just for a heartbeat, before she laughed it off. "You've changed," she said. "You used to care." "I still do," I said. "Just not about pretending anymore." She sighed dramatically, setting her cup down. "You know, I tried to come here with good intentions. I thought maybe we could be a family again, at least for Bonnie's sake. But if you want to be stubborn..." I didn't stop her as she picked up her purse. At the door, she turned back, her voice sharper now. "You'll regret this, Edward. Money comes and goes, but people leave when the money's gone," I finished for her. Her eyes flashed, but she didn't argue. She just walked out, slamming the door hard enough to make the frames rattle. When the echo faded, I stood there staring at the photo of Bonnie still on the shelf. Her smile looked the same, pure, unbothered by everything adults ruin with greed. And I thought, maybe one day she'd understand why I said no. That some love is worth giving everything for, and some love you protect by not paying for it. One morning I found the little cafe. It was tucked between a laundromat and a flower shop, with just 6 tables and the smell of warm bread drifting through the air. I liked how nobody there cared who I was. I could just sit by the window, read, and be no one special. That's where I met Megan. She was usually there early, sitting by the window with a book and a half-finished cappuccino. The first time we spoke, it was because of the book. She saw the title in my hands and smiled. "Good choice," she said. "Terrible ending, though." I laughed, the first real laugh I'd had in weeks. After that, we kept crossing paths. Small talk turned into longer conversations. She was 37, a teacher, warm and curious in a quiet way. She listened more than she spoke. She asked about everything except what I did for work, and that alone made her different. With her, there was no pretending. We talked about books, cities we'd never seen, dreams we probably wouldn't chase. She told me about her students, how one boy refused to read anything without pirates in it. I told her about random things, the cafe's music, my terrible cooking, how I once burned oatmeal so badly the pot never recovered. She laughed easily. It wasn't loud or forced, it was soft, the kind of sound that fills silence without breaking it. Over the next few weeks, it became a quiet ritual. Every morning, same table, 2 coffees, small talk that didn't feel small. For the first time since winning the lottery, I didn't feel watched. With Megan, I was just me. Not Edward the millionaire. Not Edward the story. Just Edward, the man who liked bad coffee and quiet mornings. Sometimes she'd bring me a book she thought I'd like. Sometimes I'd walk her partway home after work. It wasn't anything dramatic. No confessions, no big promises. Just the kind of slow connection that builds without anyone realizing it. One morning, sunlight caught her face just right, and I thought, maybe this is what peace looks like. She was laughing about something her students did. They'd swapped her lesson plans with a love poem for the math teacher. Her smile lingered after the story ended. I caught myself staring. She tilted her head. "What?" "Nothing," I said, smiling. "You just make mornings better." She blushed a little, rolled her eyes, and took a sip of coffee. "You're strange. Strange. Not lucky, not rich, not successful. Just strange." I couldn't remember the last time anyone had said something that honest. That afternoon, as we walked by the river, I realized something I hadn't felt in years. I wanted to tell her everything. Not to impress her, but because hiding felt wrong now. But before I could speak, she stopped me and smiled. "Don't tell me anything serious today," she said. "Let's keep this one light." So I didn't. Not that day. But as she squeezed my hand and said, "See you tomorrow, Edward," I knew the truth wouldn't stay buried forever. Still, walking home that evening, I felt lighter than I had in a long time. For the first time since that lottery ticket changed everything. I wasn't rich, I wasn't poor, I was simply alive. Weeks turned into months. The cafe mornings became dinners. The small talk became comfort. And before I knew it, Megan and I were no longer 2 strangers at neighboring tables. We were something. Not fireworks, not chaos. Just a quiet, steady kind of happiness. The kind that sneaks up on you when you've already stopped expecting it. We started spending weekends together. Cooking, walking through flea markets, watching movies at her place with her cat snoring between us. She had a way of making even silence feel full. When she laughed, it filled a room without effort. When she was sad, she didn't hide it. She just looked at me and said, "I'll be okay." And somehow, I believed her. And for a while, I was okay too. More than okay. But there was always a shadow in the corner of my mind. A secret sitting between us, quiet but heavy. I hadn't told her about the lottery. Not a word. At first, I told myself it wasn't the right time. Then I convinced myself she didn't need to know. But the truth was simpler. I was afraid. Afraid that once I told her, She'd look at me the way everyone else did, with calculation instead of care, afraid that her kindness would vanish the moment she saw the numbers attached to my name. Still, guilt has a way of growing in silence. Every time she smiled at me, every time she called me Edward in that soft voice, I felt like I was lying to her. And one evening, as we sat on her couch, her head resting on my shoulder while the city lights flickered outside, I realized I couldn't keep it anymore. I loved her, and love without truth doesn't last. So I told her everything. I started from the beginning: the gas station ticket, the TV show, the fake friends, the brother, the boss, the ex-wife who suddenly wanted family again. I told her how I'd felt like a stranger in my own life, surrounded by people who smiled too much and cared too little. And then I told her about my decision, that I hadn't touched the money because I wanted to see who was real. That meeting her was the first time I'd felt something true again, that I didn't mean to test her, I just needed to be sure. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Her expression didn't change. She just stared at me, eyes still, lips pressed together. Then she spoke quietly. "You were testing me?" I swallowed hard. "No, I was testing life, people, everything. I just didn't know how to trust anymore." Her voice trembled. "So all this time, you didn't trust me?" I wanted to reach for her hand to explain that it wasn't like that she was the only one who ever made me forget about the test entirely. But she stood up before I could. "I thought we were building something honest," she said, "and you were just watching me, waiting to see if I'd fail your little experiment." Her words hit harder than I expected, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. "I wasn't watching you," I said. "I was protecting myself. I've seen what people turn into when money shows up. I couldn't." She shook her head. "You don't protect love by hiding behind lies, Edward. You kill it." I stepped toward her. "Megan, please." "No," she said softly. "I can't be part of someone's test. I've spent too long trying to be trusted, to be seen for who I am, and now you've made me feel like a suspect." Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. Megan wasn't the kind of woman who cried to be dramatic. She just turned, grabbed her coat, and walked to the door. For a second, I thought she'd look back. She didn't. The sound of the door closing was louder than any fight I'd ever had. I stood there in the silence she left behind, surrounded by everything that used to feel safe. The faint smell of her perfume still lingered in the air, mixing with coffee and regret. And for the first time since winning the lottery, I didn't feel rich or poor. I just felt empty. For days after Megan left, the apartment felt wrong. Too quiet. Too clean. Her coffee cup was still on the counter, a faint ring marking where she'd left it. Her hair tie sat on the armrest of the couch, small and unimportant, but somehow heavier than everything else I own. It's strange how silence can be louder than words. Every sound, the hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock, felt like a reminder of what I'd ruined. For the first time since the lottery, I didn't turn on the TV, didn't check messages, didn't touch the ticket. I just sat there in the stillness, realizing the cruel symmetry of it all. I'd won because I didn't believe in luck, and I'd lost because I didn't believe in people. Megan had been right. Distrust can destroy as much as greed. All those months, I thought I was protecting myself from fake smiles, from hungry hands, from people who only saw my money. I was really just building walls. And the higher they grew, the harder it became to see who was still outside them, knocking quietly, wanting in. I thought of Bonnie, of her shy smile when she visited, the way she'd looked at me like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to love me again. And I thought of how, after that first reunion, I never called her back. I'd been too afraid Vanessa would twist things, too afraid to find out that maybe my own daughter was starting to see me the same way everyone else did, as the man with the winning ticket. So one morning I decided to stop being afraid. I took out the checkbook I hadn't touched since that day at the lottery office. The paper felt stiff, foreign, almost sacred. And for the first time, I used the money, Not to buy, not to impress, not to escape, but to build. I helped Bonnie apply for the art program she'd once mentioned. Vanessa had called it a childish dream, but when I saw Bonnie's sketches, the kind of raw talent that no parent should ever ignore, I knew she needed a chance. I paid the tuition in full. No strings, no, this is from your father. Just quiet support from somewhere she didn't expect. Then I started giving more. Not in big, dramatic gestures. Just small, quiet things. Anonymously donating to a local shelter that was about to close. Paying off a neighbor's medical bill after hearing her crying through the wall. Leaving envelopes for single parents in the grocery store parking lot. I never told anyone. For once, it wasn't about being thanked. It was about feeling human again. It's funny. Giving didn't make me feel poorer. It made me lighter, like I was finally spending something real. Weeks passed like that. Calm, simple, almost peaceful. But peace can't erase love. No matter how much good I did, I still woke up thinking about Megan. Every time I saw a bookshop window or a coffee cup with extra foam, I thought of her. I replayed that moment, her standing in the doorway, looking at me not with anger, but disappointment. The kind of disappointment that said you could have been better and you chose not to be. And the worst part was, she was right. So one night I sat down at the kitchen table, pen in hand, and wrote her a letter. No excuses, no clever explanations, just the truth. I told her I was sorry, that I hadn't realized how much I'd been living behind glass. Watching, not feeling. That she'd shown me something I didn't even know I was missing, trust. And that losing her had finally taught me the one thing winning never could. That money can fix everything except the damage we do to hearts. I didn't tell her about the donations or the tuition or any of it. This wasn't about redemption. It was about regret and hope. At the end I wrote, I don't expect forgiveness, but if one day you can think of me without anger, that's enough. And if you ever decide to see me again, you won't find the man who tested love. You'll find the man who finally learned what it means to deserve it. I folded the letter carefully, addressed it to her, and dropped it in the mailbox. Then I walked home through the quiet streets, feeling something new for the first time in months. Not sadness, not guilt, something quieter, softer, like the beginning of peace. I didn't expect her to come back. When I dropped that letter into the mailbox, I told myself it was just a way to let go. Not a bridge, but a goodbye. For weeks I heard nothing. Then one rainy evening, as I was locking up my apartment, I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, Megan stood there, soaked to the skin, holding a single envelope in her hand. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. The only sound was the rain tapping against the window behind her. Then she smiled, just slightly, and said, "You forgot to add a return address." I froze, heart pounding. "I didn't think you'd want one." "I didn't," she said softly. "Not at first." She stepped inside, her hair dripping onto the floor, eyes tired but kind. But then I read the letter again, and again, and I realized something. I waited, afraid to breathe. She looked up at me. "You were right about one thing. Money changes people, but fear changes them faster. And I think you were just scared." Her voice trembled, not with anger, but understanding. I didn't trust myself to speak, so I did the only thing that felt honest. I said, "I'm still scared." Megan smiled, that quiet, genuine smile I'd missed so much. "Good," she said. "It means you're not pretending anymore." That was the night everything began again. Not with fireworks, but with forgiveness. We didn't rush it. We started slowly, like learning to walk again. Coffee first, then walks, then laughter, then trust. She saw me now, not as a story or a test, but as a man trying to get it right this time. And I saw her as she'd always been, steady, kind, brave enough to love someone who had once been afraid of love itself. Bonnie met her a few months later. They got along instantly, both stubborn, both soft in ways they tried to hide. Watching them talk one evening, I felt something in me settle. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. I didn't need to. When Megan and I decided to marry, We didn't want anything grand. No ballroom, no cameras, no designer suits. Just something small, quiet, real, the way love had found us in the first place. The ceremony was in a garden behind the little cafe where we first met. It was a warm afternoon, the air filled with the smell of fresh bread and jasmine. Bonnie stood beside Megan, holding a small bouquet she'd made herself. White roses mixed with lavender and wildflowers she'd picked that morning. A few close friends sat under the trees smiling, not the polished smiles of politeness, but the kind that come from knowing the story behind them. As Megan walked toward me, the sunlight caught her hair, and for a second the world went quiet. No cameras, no applause, no gold, no greed. Just her. When the officiant asked if I took her to be my wife, my voice broke before the words came out. "I do," I managed, more than I ever thought I could. Megan laughed softly, that same laugh from the cafe, the one that had pulled me back to life. She said, "You'd better. You made me wait long enough." Everyone laughed, and I think that was the first time I felt something I'd been chasing since the day I held that winning ticket. Peace. After the ceremony, we sat under a tree eating cake from paper plates. Bonnie was sketching the scene in her notebook, capturing everyone in messy little lines. Me, Megan, a few friends, laughter frozen in graphite. I looked around, at my daughter, at my wife, at the handful of people who hadn't asked for anything but my company, and it hit me. For years, I'd believed money was the measure of luck. Then I thought trust was. But sitting there, surrounded by people who had stayed even when the noise faded, I realized it wasn't about either. It was about truth. The truth of who shows up when the crowd disappears. The truth of love that doesn't need proof. The truth that the richest moments in life can't be bought. They have to be lived. I used to think my story was about winning the lottery, but now I know it was really about learning how to spend something far rarer. Faith. And as Megan leaned her head on my shoulder, I whispered, almost to myself, "I finally get it." She looked up. "Get what?" "That I was never unlucky," I said. "I was just looking in the wrong direction." She smiled, took my hand, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to count or measure anything at all. Because for the first time since that winning ticket, I was finally rich. Not in dollars, but in people. It's been 2 years since that day in the cafe garden, the day I married Megan. Sometimes when the morning light falls across our kitchen just right, I still catch myself thinking how strange life is. How everything I chased for decades came to me only after I stopped running. Megan and I bought a small house outside the city. It's nothing fancy, white walls, creaky floors, a garden she's turning into a jungle of herbs and wildflowers. She says the smell of mint in the mornings reminds her that life keeps growing no matter how hard it's been. We're expecting our first child in the spring. When she told me, I didn't speak for a moment. I just held her, feeling that quiet, almost sacred weight of second chances. Bonnie lives with us every other week now. The court granted shared custody, 50-50, and it works better than I ever imagined. 1 week with me, 1 with Vanessa. It's not perfect, but it's fair. And for the first time in years, my daughter has 2 homes instead of 1 broken one. She's 15 now, taller, confident, and always sketching something. Her art program changed her. She's calmer, more sure of herself. Sometimes she shows me her drawings, sometimes she doesn't. But I always see pieces of her world taped to my fridge. Soft pencil lines, quiet stories on paper. Vanessa and I are civil. We talk about Bonnie, sometimes even share a laugh. Every now and then she hints about how difficult everything is financially. And I help in Nina, but only when it's for Bonnie, never for her. It's a strange peace we've found. Not warmth, but an understanding that we've both changed in ways neither of us could have back then. William calls sometimes too. Not often, but enough. He still jokes about my golden ticket life and occasionally slips in a request for a loan. I help when I can, but never with big amounts. I think deep down he's learned that my money doesn't come with open hands anymore. It comes with boundaries. And strangely, our relationship works better that way. As for the rest, the so-called friends who appeared after my win, most of them are gone now. Not with drama or fights, just silence. They stopped calling when the dinner stopped, when I didn't invest in their dreams or join their trips. And that's okay. The people who stayed, the quiet few who never cared about what I had, they're enough. I invested part of the money, nothing flashy, just something steady that lets us live comfortably without thinking about bills. The rest, I still treat carefully, like a tool, not a treasure. But the best thing I ever spent it on wasn't the house, or the tuition, or even the charities. It was time. Time to rediscover who I was before the noise. When I was a teenager, I used to paint, landscapes mostly. I'd stay up until 2 in the morning, trying to capture light the way I saw it. I stopped after college, when life became about survival instead of beauty. A few months ago, Megan bought me a set of brushes and a blank canvas. Now, every Sunday, after breakfast, I paint. Sometimes Bonnie joins me, sometimes she paints better than I do. And every time I dip that brush into color, I realize how lucky I really am. Not because of the ticket, not because of what it bought, but because after losing faith in everyone, and even in myself, life gave me something I never thought I'd find again. Peace, family, and the kind of happiness that doesn't shout, but hums quietly in the background, steady and alive.